And here we are at MSG, NSG, WHQ, and I have signed up for a Threads account. And you may or may not know, but Threads is this creation of the fine folks who run Instagram, and it's supposed to be a Twitter killer. And I guess they must have seen an opportunity because everybody's kvetching about Twitter right now and all of Elon Musk's strange activities over there. So I signed up for it, and it gave me the opportunity to follow all the same people I already follow on Instagram, which seems kind of redundant. But basically, it's sort of a Twitterish feed. I don't know if you've looked into it at all. It's kind of a Twitterish feed. There's a few photos and stuff like that, but mostly it's the kind of like, a few sentences of text. And people get to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and it's the same stuff. I don't know how I feel about it yet. Have you looked into it yet?
I've heard of it. I have not looked into it. And maybe I will, just because I'm in the technology and website business. But here's my prediction. I may not have a crystal ball, but I have a big bald head that kind of looks like one.
Fair enough. It's a good start.
And if I rub my head and I say, there's enough people that are complaining about Elon Musk and Twitter and whatever else that a few million people might subscribe, but it's going to be a ghost town. It's like, what do you use Twitter for? It's like, you want to know, like if there's an electric outage, DTE is going to be on Twitter saying, here's the outage area, or Comcast is going to be saying this. And do you really think all of those companies and services are going to sign up for this other thing too? Probably not. I suspect it's going to be a flash in the pan. Not that we should ignore it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I suspect that's the way that this is going to go. Do we really need one more thing to check?
Well, I got two thoughts on that. One is that it seems derivative, right? Like the reason things like Facebook really took off is when they came out, when Facebook first came out, when Twitter first came out, they were one-off, they were brand new. It was a new technology, a new experience. People really glommed onto it. This is, Twitter's suffering a little bit. Let's see if we can get some opportunity. And so they made something that's essentially Twitter with a little bit of different algorithmic approach. And unless it offers something really special, I agree with you.
Other than being, making people who are ticked off at Elon Musk feel good for the 2 months that this lasts, it better offer something more than that, right?
Yeah, well, if you're in the great interweb and you do something like, they got 30 million signups in the first few days, but that's, the sustainability is the question. But the other thing is, you and I are kind of insulated from this, but Twitter is kind of the home, the haven for the people that like to go on political diatribes and get into bitching contests about stuff. I got no interest in getting lost in that shit. And so I don't use Twitter other than for a few professional things. And so maybe those folks will jump on it. But my understanding is a lot of those alternative platforms that they created, like for example, the conservatives created some platforms like Truth Social and stuff. My understanding is A, they didn't really take off that much. And B, the stuff on there is kind of as you would expect, all the people that were banned from the other platforms bitching about being banned on the other platforms. So I don't know. I signed up for it because we're in the business and I want to make sure I knew what the experience is like. And it's probable that using one of the platforms that we use where we can post on a bunch of different things, we might end up going ahead and posting on Threads too, to see if it helps our clients. Because every now and then you're surprised, right? Every now and then an industry gets all excited about a certain platform. You and I saw that a few years ago with one of our industrial clients, the coordinate measuring machine folks. We did their Twitter campaign. It worked really well for them, but I wouldn't have predicted that ahead of time.
You don't know unless you try.
That is true. Don't know what you don't know. What else do you hear about the great world of SEO and internet fabulousness and success?
Well, a little bird told me that the Michigan SEO Group recently posted an article found on Search Engine Journal about the common mistakes that people make with SEO.
Yes, they did. And there are a lot of them.
Would you care to elaborate?
Well, I want to get caught up and remind myself, because I believe I was the one that found that article and posted it. But I do remember that several of the things that I saw on there were not a surprise.
And full disclosure, I didn't actually click to read it. You mentioned that it was posted. I think maybe you, over a conversation, you mentioned a couple of things, but I could probably think of several off the top of my head.
Well, example, like there are many SEO mistakes people make. Some of them are to our eyes absurd, like that anybody would do that. But we're in a business, so it's probably not fair to judge lay people by the same standards. But what springs to mind for you?
Thinking that you're going to pay somebody $300 or $500 a month or whatever it is, and you're going to rise to the top when everybody else is paying the same $300 or $500 a month to some random, off the shelf service. You're doing the same thing as everybody else, and you're expecting different results. That would be a big mistake.
That would be a big mistake. And you and I have talked about this before. Listen, if you're going to pay professionals to do work, you've got to think about that, right? When you write the check. If you think, okay, I've got a professional who spent, at least 4 years going to college, a year or two becoming at least a novice at their field, hopefully more than that. In our case, we've got folks, we've been in the business 17 years. We've got, a bunch of college graduates, people that work hard. Are you really going to pay them, $10 an hour to do this work? It costs us, our whole team a lot more than that to deliver it. And so it's just a realistic calculation. On the flip side, as a business owner, I get that. I want to save money. But there's such a thing as saving money and costing you a lot more in the long run. One of the examples on that Search Engine Journal article was a guy on an SEO team, and they got brought in late on a redesign of a big national retail site. He claimed it was a $10 million redesign. So that's a big site. And he said that there was no plan to redirect millions of old URLs, right? So you've got all those URLs out there. People are habituated to going to them. Their SEO value to them. And he told the team, hey, listen, we got to redirect these old URLs. And the big IT consultant said, no way. It's too complicated. It's out of the scope of our project. We're not going to do it. And according to this guy, the retail company lost $5 million the first month that the new site was out. That's an example of saving money and ending up costing you a lot more in the long run.
Well, we've seen that in terms of people who hired us or somebody else to do some SEO for them, and they're starting to gain traction, and then they hire some graphic designer dude to build them a new website. And of course, whoever they hired is only interested in how it looks, has no technical expertise, no expertise in SEO other than they know it's a term and they should say that, yes, they do it, but they don't actually do anything. Right. And they redesign the site and they don't redirect any of the old, right? You spent all this time building up your website, getting higher and higher in a search engine, and then you just totally redo the site, make everything totally different, and you just assume that, whatever credit you've gotten for all this time served is going to transfer over. It doesn't work that way.
So here's an interesting thing. You're in the IT business as well. And you and I have had conversations about this where sometimes you have folks that you're trying to set up a new, set of servers for or something, and they don't always want to spend the money to do all this stuff. And you're very diligent about telling them, look, this is the outcome. This is the consequence of not taking those steps, of not having backups, whatever that might be. So clearly it's a human tendency to want to save money or to take shortcuts. But I would say that it sounds like, based on what you've told me, that this is the same kind of problem. If you don't, I don't know, I want to pound the table and say, listen, if you hire experts, you should listen to them. But why do you think that is? Is it just because people want to save money? Is it too complicated for them to think about? Why do you think people in both of these games and in a lot of other businesses too, don't take the steps they need to take to make sure things are done right?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One that comes to mind is people get in their own way. We had a guy on the IT side of things come to us, and I'm an IT guy and I know what I'm doing, but I need help with this. And he hires us, and I unleash my lead technician to go meet with him and scope out the project. And he spent the first 45 minutes telling us, I know what I'm doing. I don't need you guys. And And of course, what we found was a complete mess, and he didn't want to hear that you didn't do anything right. And you told us what you want, and we can tell you how to get there, but nothing is set up correctly. You're going to have to fix all this stuff. And he didn't want to hear it.
I mean, that's a nightmare. I don't know if it's the worst thing we experience in SEO, but it's up there. When somebody calls us up, a guy who runs a company, and he goes, "Yeah, I've done a lot of my own marketing. I'm pretty good at this stuff. I'm just too busy to do it. So I'll kind of tell you how to do it, and you guys just implement it." Okay, that's not going to go well, and here's why. Oh, no, 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 no. You should go ahead and do it this way. Well, listen, we're in the business. We do this every day. That's not going to go well. Just do it that way. Well, usually in our case, we go, no, we're not doing it, right? We're just, we probably shouldn't work together. But once in a while, somebody says, listen, I absolutely insist you do it this way. We go, okay, but here's the consequences. And then when the consequences come out, right, it's cost them a lot more money. They've got to eat crow. It's probably a life lesson. It's not just an SEO or IT lesson. It's probably a life lesson.
Yeah, and that's not always the case that people come to us and we say, we know what we're doing. Some people have questions or concerns, or they think it'll work one way, and we'll definitely work with them and talk things over. But it's when they're like, no, that's not, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, well, why did you hire us? We've been doing this for 17 years. I think we do know what we're doing.
Well, the old martial arts analogy actually goes before that, like the Zen Buddhism analogy, right? Is the guy goes in to talk to the master, and he starts coming in, and he's just opining, and the master's very polite, so he serves him some tea, and he starts pouring the guy tea, and he just tips the kettle, and it just keeps pouring and pouring and pouring, and the cup overflows, and the guy goes, "What are you doing? Like, the cup's overflowing." And the master says, "Listen, like this cup, you are full of your own opinions, and they are flowing out. Because of that, you can't take anything new in." And I guess that's part of the human condition. People just have trouble putting their own opinions aside, and sometimes they have to learn by learn the hard way, the expensive way.
You can't bring something like that out without me bringing in a more modern example of I went to a martial arts seminar, and there's a guy, we're in the changing room, and this guy's like, how do you tie these pants? Does it go in the front or in the back? Oh, yeah. Normally you put the pants on, you tie them in the front. The next thing I know, we're out on the floor of some seminar, and the guy that doesn't know how to tie his pants is trying to tell everybody how to do everything.
So that is, sometimes when a lesson is powerful enough, it becomes codified. And so at my dojo at JMac, that has become codified as a rule. That is called the Sensei Mike rule. And the Sensei Mike rule is, don't tell others how to do martial arts until you know how to tie your own pants. On that topic, actually a different topic, is the WordPress plugin topic, right? You were going on a little bit ago about people who create a new website, and maybe the things aren't done just right, or done by designers who maybe know more about making things look pretty than they do about making things functional or making them SEO effective. And one of the problems with WordPress designers, there are many good ones, but a lot of folks take a short course in WordPress. They know how to make a pretty site. They give it to you. There you go. Good luck to you. Here's the Yoast plugin. Hope it goes well. The problem is themes and plugins go out of date. They don't always cooperate well together. And once in a while, a plugin goes rogue and causes the whole site to go down. And a lot of times your WordPress designer, who's only used to going out and finding what works and making it, cobbling it together so it goes, can't solve that problem. That was one of the things on the Search Engine Journal article, was a WordPress plugin that went rogue. And we've seen that fairly often, right? Had to come in and fly into the rescue before.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's not like one of these things that you just hear about that happens to other people. No, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's why we insist. Sometimes WordPress makes sense, maybe because it's somebody's invested a lot of money and they already have a site. So we're going to inherit and work with what they have. Or there is some plugin or functionality that WordPress provides that would be difficult or impossible to replicate otherwise. So we're working with WordPress, but we almost always insist on hosting the site and making sure that maintenance is performed. And the reason why is because, first of all, it's going to be backed up. So if anything goes wrong, we can restore it easily and quickly. And you'd be surprised how many places you're paying them to host your website, and they're not backing it up, or maybe they claim they do, but it doesn't work, or it takes forever. And then something goes wrong with the plugin, or because it's not just WordPress, right? It's the theme, it's the plug, and not only a plugin. Most sites have dozens of plugins, and something breaks, and you don't have access to the server logs. if somebody else is hosting it, and then you can't figure out what's going on. So when we host it, I've got experts that know what they're doing. We can immediately go into the log and see what's going on and fix it.
Yeah, and you know, we've been around the block a few times. I've heard many stories of you going in to do that. And my other friends that are in the IT business similarly. Hey, speaking of that, yesterday at my business networking group, one of the members was talking about a failed laptop. Happily, it was easy to fix, but it brought up backup issues. You guys have any experience with Carbonite? Is that a good backup system?
I think it's an okay backup system. If it's just one person and you want to back up however much data you have, I think Backblaze is better because it's less expensive and they don't limit you to how much data you have.
It's called what?
Backblaze.
Backblaze. That's cool.
Yeah.
And
like
what about
$60 a year for all the data you can eat?
I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that 20 years ago, being able to get that much memory. And I suppose the amateur hack is to do everything on Dropbox or something like that. And that way, if you lose your laptop, you can just re-log into Dropbox on a different account. You see any downfalls to that for the average individual user?
Yes, if I use Dropbox all the time because I have multiple computers. I got a desktop at home, I got a desktop at work, I got a couple of laptops, and they're all syncing in Dropbox, and it works great. What happens if one of those computers gets a virus that encrypts and corrupts all your data? Well, what's Dropbox going to do? It's going to upload all those changes, and then they're all going to download it, and now everybody's all encrypted and whatever else.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have any screening method to make sure that doesn't happen?
Now, I think they do have a rollback method where you could say, I want the previous version of this file. And I'm positive you can do it one file at a time. I don't know if you could just say, I need everything rolled back the way it was 2 days ago. I think maybe they do, but I'm not positive of that. So I make sure that I back up my stuff with Backblaze anyway.
And so Backblaze has some kind of utility to help eliminate viruses and things like that?
No, it doesn't, but it's a multi-generational backup. So
I see.
You can say, I want all my data from 2 days ago.
I see. Perfect. Right. That's good to know. And that's useful for our listeners, our thousands upon thousands of listeners to this SEO podcast. Speaking of podcasting, it's time to turn from the first S in our podcast title, SEO, to the second S in our podcast title, which is steak and margaritas. And I know we've chatted about it a little bit. I have some goodies to share, but any recent steak and margarita experiences you'd like to share?
Well, I have been talking about this cowboy steak that I've ended up in my freezer. It was so sad that day. I think I bought it, and it was 2 days past, and my wife, put it in this what do you call that? The airtight, the vacuum seal bag, and threw it in the freezer. I'm like, oh. So I've had big plans for this, and finally I pulled it out and getting ready to do it. And I think it was last Saturday, and the weather was kind of iffy or wasn't great. And I've been known to go outside in my raincoat and be grilling in the rain, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I reverse seared it in the oven and busted out the cast iron, little, butter on top of it. And it was quite delightful, but I will say it was not Wagyu delightful.
So Wagyu's our standard now. It has to be, well, listen, what do we can abstract, right? I don't want to set that as it's the criteria, right? Not the name. So we want steak that is flavorful, tender, juicy, right? When it comes to you, is what it says it is, right? I mean, if someone sells you a ribeye, it shouldn't be a chuck roast. And then once in a while, we were just talking about this yesterday, occasionally you'll get a ribeye that's cut from part of the animal that it's got tons of tendinous tissue in. You don't want that. So you start with a good quality steak, well aged, and then, so Wagyu has the advantage, right, of being very well treated animals with lots of fat. So it's going to be juicy. It's probably going to be tender. It's usually going to be quite flavorful. I don't know. You've had, I think you said, did you a few weeks ago, there was a Wagyu you had that wasn't stellar? And I'm trying to remember why. Was it the cooking method or was where we got it?
I think It might have been a little of both. I thought maybe I'd be Mr. Fancy Pants and stick it in the sous vide machine. I'm not sure if it was still a little frozen on the inside and then come up to the right. Like I gave it an hour and a half and I should have given it 2 hours.
Yeah, I got to go back to the laboratory on that. I still have a theory that sous vide is probably not best for super high fat content meats, because there's a degree to which the searing component needs to dry the meat out, right? And I've already noticed that if I do conventional oven reverse sear versus sous vide reverse sear, that the char, the searing portion is different. It requires more heat to get the same results, right? Because more of the moisture is left in the meat. So that's just laboratory conditions. So I don't know if you got a super fatty piece of meat like Wagyu and you got it sous vide, there's lots of moisture and fat still in that meat. Maybe the sear has to be different, which reminds me, I haven't gone out and gotten a torch yet. I still want to try that. I got to try that. Maybe that's a project for this weekend, but I don't have any lovely, lovely steaks sitting in my refrigerator or freezer at the moment. So I may have to do a little shopping to make sure that happens.
Are you going to go to Sparrow Market?
Here's the problem. It was less than 20 minutes ago. I was bellyaching to you about all the traffic I had to deal with this morning. And Sparrow Market, which our listeners may not know, is in a part of Ann Arbor where there's a market and it's very congested. And I have a feeling that my 3 minutes of shopping at Sparrow would involve an hour total of transport time. And I'm not really looking forward to that.
No, it makes my soul cry just thinking about it. I'm such a grouchy old man.
Right. But listen, I have a couple of alternatives. If I want to go B plus, I can and save money, I can go to Costco, which is,
pretty good normally.
Pretty good, right? And it's half a mile from my house. Sometimes even Costco will have a special, they'll have some Prime or something in there and you can buy that. But in the same complex as Prime, there's a local market called Knights, and they have a little extension market there where they sell some olive oil and some Italian crackers and some vegetables, and they have a butcher counter there because that's what they're famous for. And if I want to spend $26, $28 a pound for a porterhouse or something like that, I can go to Knights. I guarantee it'll be good, but often the problem
any better than Bush's or Meijer?
Well, it depends. That's my challenge. They're so well known for their great beef, and often it is quite good. I don't know if it is substantially better. It's better than Meijer. Listen, Meijer.
But Bush's has pretty good stuff.
Bush's has surprisingly good meat, right? And Costco's B plus, A minus, depending on what you get. It's very inexpensive. Bush's is in that same range, sometimes a little higher.
You're Mr. Whole Food Pants going up and talking to the butcher guy there.
Okay. So right across the street from where I'm sitting right now, there's a Whole Foods, and I know a couple of. I know by name a couple of the butchers over there. And I'll go in and look at what they've got. Sometimes they have good stuff. Sometimes they have good porterhouse. Sometimes they have good ribeyes. I don't buy tenderloins very often, but sometimes it's good. But what I more often do is I go, you got anything aged hanging in the back? And if they say yes, I go, cut it for me. And that way I can get it cut super thick and do all the lovelies that I like. And those turn out pretty good.
I've never bought a steak at Whole Foods.
If you wander over there and talk to the guys, they're pretty cool. Unfortunately, sometimes they'll go, we're just out of that stuff. So it's what you see behind the counter.
I like going into Bush's, and the guy that's in the back cutting the meat, he just looks like, his life is horrible and he's all miserable. But once in a while, he'll come out and I start asking him about all the meat cuts and he gets all excited.
What I like is when I go out to my friends in Colorado, which I do a couple times a year, they've decided I'm the guy to cook the steaks, which is probably a good idea because I'll do the best job. And they have these markets out there. I can't remember what they're called, but it's kind of similar to Bush's or whatever. And they have a meat counter. It's not the most fabulous meat counter in the world. But I get the impression out there, people go, they see what's behind the counter, they get it, the butcher puts it in some package, puts the price on it, and they go buy it. And I get the impression nobody ever asks them for special cuts, because I go out there and I say, listen, I need 7 ribeyes and I need them a solid 2 inches thick, blah, 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 blah. And the guy's eyes are always just like, huh, really? Is that what you want? And then they get really excited It's like going to the zoo. If you go to the zoo during peak hours, the animals are over in the back picking their butts and they don't want anything to do with you. But if you go to the zoo like in early spring or late fall when nobody's in there, animals are like, what? Somebody's here. Let me go talk to them. And I don't mean to compare butchers to animals, but I will say this. They're very happy to see you and to interact with you in a positive way. And it seems like the Whole Foods guys are the same way. They're butchers. They're into the meat. They like talking about it, how you're going to cook it. So it's convenient because if you're sitting in the office here and you look over the top of your computer, which I'm doing right now, you can see Whole Foods, and then you're going to want to go over there and buy some steaks.
Now, I am led to believe that you recently had an extraordinary steakhouse experience.
Thank you for bringing that up. I did indeed. I was very, very pleased. As we talked about, I was going out to Vegas last weekend for a couple of things, and one doesn't simply go to a big town without looking into the steak and margarita scene. And so I looked at a bunch of steak places and a bunch of reviews, and I settled on a place called Vic and Anthony's. And it's right in the thick of things. It's real near Fremont Street. You drive by a lot of meth heads and zombies, but you go and park in a parking lot and you go into the casino and you go to Vic and Anthony's, and it's a very luxurious restaurant. The waiter was great. He was super personable, very informative, super helpful. And I'll just get to the meat of the thing because we're a little over time here. But I ordered a ribeye medium rare, which was wonderful. And my insane daughter ordered an A5 Wagyu tenderloin, which was listed at market price. And I made the mistake of waiting till I got the bill to find out how much that cost. But the steaks were wonderful. They were definitely 9.5 plus, cooked perfectly, seasoned well. You could taste the aging, which I really like. I like a steak where you can say, you know what, that's clearly been aged. Very juicy, tender, just absolutely fabulous. But one of the things that I noted, and I mentioned to you the other day, we got our salad, and the salad had this citrus dressing on, which at first bite was a little surprising to me. I'm not saying I didn't like it. It was just like, I don't think I would have ordered that had I known that was on there. But then when we got to the steak, you'd have a bite of steak and you'd have a bite of salad, and that citrus dressing was amazing. It, like a fine red wine, it tasted better in combination with that steak, and it kind of helped cut the fat taste a little bit. And going back and forth between those two was a stroke of genius. I was super impressed with that.
Lovely.
It was lovely. So if anybody's listening and they want to go to Vic and Anthony's, make sure you save your pennies because it will not be cheap. It's super helpful if Big Don Pryor sends you a gift card ahead of time. But be warned, that gift card, right, is like putting sandbags on the bank of a river that's getting overflowed with rain. You got to be prepared for you got to prepare for the extra.
It might have covered half of one of the appetizers or something.
Well, I won't say that. That was very generous of you, and it did cover a goodly portion of that steak dinner. And thank you very much for that. But the Amex had to come out. And the good news about the Amex is if you go over enough dollars on your SkyMile Amex, you get a bunch of perks from the airline, and that's always very nice.
Extra bag of peanuts.
Extra bag of you know what? On the way out to Vegas, I could only find 3 seats together, kind of in the back of toward the back of the plane on the way out, and so I got them, and no complaints, and it's my fault, but my wife doesn't have TSA pre or any of that stuff. So the 3 of us always have to go through the regular line. We don't get to go through, the regular line. We did get Sky Priority, but we're sitting in the back of the plane and all's going perfectly well. And about halfway to Vegas, the flight attendant comes over to us with a big armful of gummy bears and potato chips and peanuts and all that other kind of stuff. And she's like, "Oh, Mr. Sweeney." And I go, "Yes, would you like these?" And I'm like, "Sure. I got a 15-year-old daughter here. She'll gobble that stuff down." She goes, "Yeah, we're just so thankful for your status, and we wanted to recognize that and give you a few gifts." I guess that was a lot cheaper than giving us Comfort Plus seats. But it was still a nice perk. And I can't complain. I'm flying to Tokyo this fall on SkyMile. So the system works as intended. Let's put it that way. There you go. Yes, sir. All right, sir. Wonderful conversation. Makes me want to improve. I'm going to try and do better this weekend on the steak and margarita front. I hope you come up with a story as well.
I'm gonna have to think about this one.
All right, make
I'm
it.
shooting high. The bar's high.
Okay, we got a good. We're gonna shoot for 9.5 pluses.
Me and
Rock and
Bob the
roll.
Smoker. All right.
I like it. Talk to you soon.